Edward Samuel Ed Miliband is a British politician who was leader of the Labour Party as well as leader of the opposition between 2010 and 2015. He has been the Member of Parliament for Doncaster North since 2005 and served in the Cabinet from 2007 to 2010 under Prime Minister Gordon Brown. He and his brother, David Miliband, were the first siblings to sit in the Cabinet simultaneously since Edward and Oliver Stanley in 1938. Born in London, Miliband graduated from Corpus Christi College at the University of Oxford and the London School of Economics, becoming first a television journalist, a Labour Party researcher and a visiting scholar at Harvard University before rising to become one of Chancellor Gordon Brown's confidants and chairman of Treasury's Council of Economic Advisers. Miliband was elected to Parliament in 2005, succeeding the retiring Labour MP Kevin Hughes in Doncaster North. Prime Minister Tony Blair made Miliband Parliamentary Secretary to the Cabinet Office in May 2006, and when Gordon Brown became Prime Minister in 2007, he appointed Miliband Minister for the Cabinet Office and Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Miliband was subsequently promoted to the new post of Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, a position he held from 2008 to 2010. After Labour was defeated in the May 2010 general election, Brown resigned as leader, and in September 2010, Miliband was elected leader of the Labour Party. Miliband's tenure as Labour leader was characterised by a leftward shift in his party's policies and opposition to the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition government's cuts to the public sector. He led his party into several elections, including the 2014 European Parliament election and the 2015 general election. Following Labour's loss to the Conservative Party at the general election, Miliband announced his resignation as leader on 8 May 2015. He was succeeded in the ensuing leadership election by Jeremy Corbyn. Early life and education. Born in University College Hospital in Fitzrovia, London, Miliband is the younger son of immigrant parents. His mother, Marian Kozak, a human rights campaigner and early CND member, is a Polish Jew who survived the Holocaust thanks to being protected by Catholic Poles. His father, Ralph Miliband, was a Belgian-born Polish Jewish Marxist academic whose father fled with him to England during World War II. The family lived on Edders Street in Primrose Hill, London. His elder brother, David Miliband, still owns the house today. Ralph Miliband left his academic post at the London School of Economics in 1972 to take up a chair at the University of Leeds as a professor of politics. His family moved to Leeds with him in 1973, and Miliband attended Featherbank Infant School in Horsforth between 1974 and 1977, during which time he became a fan of Leeds United. Due to his father's later employment as a roving teacher, Miliband spent 2 spells living in Boston, Massachusetts, 1 year when he was 7 and 1 middle school term when he was 12. Miliband remembered his time in the US as one of his happiest, during which he became a fan of American culture, watching Dallas and following the Boston Red Sox and the New England Patriots. Between 1978 and 1981, Ed Miliband attended Primrose Hill Primary School, near Primrose Hill, in Camden, and then from 1981 to 1989, Haverstock Comprehensive School in Chalk Farm. He learned to play the violin while at school, and as a teenager, he reviewed films and plays on LBC Radio's Young London programme as one of its fortnightly 3 o'clock reviewers. After completing his O-levels, he worked as an intern to family friend Tony Benn, the MP for Chesterfield. In 1989, Miliband gained 4 A-levels in mathematics, English, further mathematics and physics physics, and then read philosophy, politics and economics at Corpus Christi College, Oxford. In his first year, he was elected JCR president, leading a student campaign against a rise in rent charges. In his second year, he dropped philosophy, and was awarded an upper second-class Bachelor of Arts degree. He went on to graduate from the London School of Economics with a Master of Science in Economics. Early political career: Special Advisor. In 1992, after graduating from the University of Oxford, Miliband began his working career in the media as a researcher to co-presenter Andrew Rawnsley in the Channel 4 show A Week in Politics. In 1993, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury Harriet Harman approached Rawnsley to recruit Miliband as her policy researcher and speechwriter. At the time, Yvette Cooper also worked for Harman as part of Labour's shadow Treasury team. In 1994, when Harriet Harman was moved by the newly elected Labour leader Tony Blair to become Shadow Secretary of State for Employment, Miliband stayed on in the Shadow Treasury team and was promoted to work for Shadow Chancellor Gordon Brown. In 1995, with encouragement from Gordon Brown, Miliband took time out from his job to study at the London School of Economics, where he obtained a Master's in Economics. After Labour's 1997 landslide victory, Miliband was appointed as a special advisor to Chancellor Gordon Brown from 1997 to 2002. Harvard. On the 25th of July 2002, it was announced that Miliband would take a 12-month unpaid sabbatical from Treasury to be a visiting scholar at the Center for European Studies of Harvard University for 2 semesters. He spent his time at Harvard teaching economics, and stayed there after September 2003 for an additional semester teaching a course titled What's Left? The Politics of Social Justice. During this time, he was granted access to Senator John Kerry and reported to Brown on the presidential hopeful's progress. After Miliband returned to the UK in January 2004, Gordon Brown appointed him chairman of Treasury's Council of Economic Advisers as a replacement for Ed Balls, with specific responsibility for directing the UK's long-term economic planning. Parliament. In early 2005, Miliband resigned his advisory role to Treasury to stand for election. Kevin Hughes, then the Labour MP for Doncaster North, announced in February of that year that he would be standing down at the next election due to being diagnosed with motor neurone disease. Miliband applied for selection to be the candidate in the safe Labour seat and won, beating off a close challenge from Michael Duffer, then ASPAT Defence Secretary Jeff Hoon. Duffer would later become an MP in 2010. Gordon Brown visited Doncaster North during the general election campaign to support his former advisor. Miliband was elected to Parliament on 5 May 2005, with over 50% of the vote on a majority of 12,656. He made his maiden speech in the House of Commons on 23 May, responding to comments made by future Speaker John Bercow. In Tony Blair's cabinet reshuffle in May 2006, he was made the parliamentary secretary to the Cabinet Office as Minister for the Third Sector, with responsibility for voluntary and charity organisations. Cabinet. On 28 June 2007, the day after Gordon Brown had become Prime Minister, Miliband was sworn of the Privy Council and appointed Minister for the Cabinet Office and Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, being promoted to the Cabinet. This meant that he and his brother, Foreign Secretary David Miliband, became the first brothers to serve in a British cabinet since Edward and Oliver Stanley in 1938. He was additionally given the task of drafting Labour's manifesto for the 2010 general election. On 3 October 2008, Miliband was promoted to become Secretary of State for the newly created Department of Energy and Climate Change in a cabinet reshuffle. On 16 October, Miliband announced that the British government would legislate to oblige itself to cut greenhouse emissions by 80% by 2050, rather than the 60% cut in carbon dioxide emissions previously announced. In March 2009, while Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, Miliband attended the UK premiere of climate change film The Age of Stupid, where he was ambushed by actor Pete Postlethwaite, who threatened to return his OBE and vote for any party other than Labour if the King's North coal-fired power station were to be given the go-ahead by the government. A month later, Miliband announced to the House of Commons a change to the government's policy on coal-fired power stations, saying that any potential new coal-fired power stations would be unable to receive government consent unless they could demonstrate that they would be able to effectively capture and bury 25% of the emissions they produce immediately, with a view to seeing that rise to 100% of emissions by 2025. This, a government source told The Guardian, effectively represented a complete rewrite of UK energy policy for the future. Miliband represented the UK at the 2009 Copenhagen summit, from which emerged a global commitment to provide an additional $10 billion a year to fight the effects of climate change, with an additional $100 billion a year provided by 2020. The conference was not able to achieve a legally binding agreement. Miliband accused China of deliberately foiling attempts at a binding agreement. China explicitly denied this, accusing British politicians of engaging in a political scheme. During the 2009 parliamentary expenses scandal, Miliband was named by the Daily Telegraph as one of the saints of the scandal, due to his claiming one of the lowest amounts of expenses in the House of Commons and submitting no claims that later had to be paid back.